Right then, I think we're about ready to get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time today to spend an hour or so with us talking about 365 Copilot and what's going on in the Microsoft AI ecosystem. So I'm joined today by Fraser, our Head of Business Solutions, and Johan Venables, who's our Modern Workplace and Copilot Architect. And I'm Mark Rotheram. I'm the CTO at BCN. So, just going to quickly go through what we're going to talk through today as an agenda. So, first of all, we're going to touch on a little bit of what's happened in AI in the last 12 months, a bit of sentiment around the Microsoft Copilot. We're then going to look at the Copilot ecosystem, dig into the 365 Copilot, and go through a bit of the feedback that we've seen from our early adopters. And then we're going to go through a bit of how to start before we get into a couple of demos that Johan and Fraser are going to take us through. There will be time, hopefully, for some Q&A at the end. There is a QR code on the screen, and we will post a link in the chat. We're using a piece of software called Slido today, and that's going to do two things. One, it's going to let us ask you a question, which you'll see if you scan the QR code. But it's also where you can ask questions, and if you see a question you want to see answered, you can click a little thumbs up, and we'll try and do all the most popular ones before the end of the session today. Start off with, we have got the poll. The link should be in the chat. If not, just scan the back QR code with your phone and it'll take you straight there. There's no login or anything like that you need to do. And the question is, what do you think will be the main impact of AI in the workplace? So have a quick think about it. It is multiple choice. So you can just choose from the options we're given. And we're using it just to get a bit of insights and just to see how those insights relate across our customer base and beyond. We did a very similar poll to a bunch of CTOs and CIOs last year. And it's quite interesting to see the different perspectives. So just starting to dig into kind of like what's happened in the last 12 months. Now, if I kind of click forward, we've seen quite a big shift, if I'm honest, and it's probably 18 months or so now since we've seen this shift. If we go back to 18 months ago, the big trends were all about Web 3.0. The hype curve was there. It was going into the whole metaverse, which has really had a little bit recently with the Apple new software and tooling coming out. But really, what happened was we got the new kid on the block. We got a brand new magic box of generative AI appear, and it's really started to disrupt and to accelerate a trend that's been going for years in artificial intelligence. But what it's really done is opened the doors to a much more advanced AI than we've ever seen before, a much broader set of capabilities. And it's really started to change the ecosystems that we traditionally work with. And the biggest one of those ecosystems that's capitalized on this is Microsoft. Their strategic investments in OpenAI have put them at the front of the pack, really, with generative AI. And they're now capitalizing on that across their entire ecosystem. And it is fair to say that the rate of change we've seen out of Microsoft since the last 12 months has been huge. The amount of announcements and then deployments and then updates is a much faster rate of change than we've seen before. So I'm just going to go into a little bit of why are we all fussed about this? What's the big fuss? So ChatGPT came out November 18 months ago, and it was the fastest application to be adopted ever. It went to 100,000 used in 2 months. And this is just a sign of ever increasing adoption of new technology over time. You can see on the little chart there what that adoption curve looks like and how quickly ChatGPT has accelerated beyond to hitting there 2 months to hit a bigger number than the previous, ones which took years or much longer amount of time. So we're seeing, this hit the ground running much quicker. Microsoft have made a multi-million-dollar investment in OpenAI, and they continue to do so. And their strategy is to embed AI copilots into their entire application ecosystem. And I'll touch a little bit of what that looks like in a moment. But it's a vast strategy. they are, from my perspective, still ahead of the curve with the competition because of that investment they did early into OpenAI and the speed at which they've come to market with it. But really, the fuss from our perspective is AI in the workplace, and the first three bits there are Microsoft taglines. It's going to augment how we work, from where we work, using our data. But from my perspective, the real big thing that's going to happen is it's going to help us level up the workforce. Everybody that uses the productivity ecosystem that Microsoft give us in Office 365 and 365 will get more value out of that ecosystem with Copilot. So my kind of tagline against all that, why all the fuss, is because it's disruptive. We're seeing a disruptive theme hit the market. Microsoft are leading the way, and we're now trying to figure out how to make the most out of that investment and capability. So the sentiment that's kind of come in, and again, this is based on a audit and a work trend index that Microsoft pulled together last year. So 31,000 individuals spread across the world. This is kind of the thoughts and the sentiment that they have coming into this kind of new AI theme. So big chunk of people, 68%, say they don't have enough uninterrupted time to focus during the workday. People are more excited about AI helping them than losing their jobs to it, especially in this productivity space where we can see actually its marginal gains. And 82% of leaders say that they will need new skills. And, one of the big skills that I think we're not prepared for is prompt engineering and understanding the concept of how to write a good prompt and what that means and how to get value out of our data when it's spread across multiple systems. And it's the art of the possible. I didn't know I could do that type thinking that we need to start bringing into our employees. And now the main sentiment I get from this is people are enthusiastic about AI. They see it come in. They might not be jumping fully 2 feet onto the bandwagon, but they've seen what's happened over the last year, and they can visualize how it can help their business. One of the key kind of tipping scales that's really interesting for me is this one around where the time is spent. At the moment, the scales, and this is fed from data from 365, is very much on communication. And less on creation. And what Microsoft are hoping with the adoption of 365 Copilot, it levels those scales out. So what we see is actually communication is more effective, and people get more time to be productive and actually creating content and putting out better content that's more rounded. And again, the tagline there is rebalance. So it's how do we get that balanced workday back where we're not spending all of our time on Teams meetings and then trying to catch up, and getting that bit of time back, even if it's capturing meeting notes and actions without having to spend 20 minutes writing them after the meeting. Those are the kind of examples that will really make that change. Now, from an industry perspective, and this is where the poll comes in, this is the industry view of the world of where we, again, the 31,000 people that were asked, where do they think actually the impact is going to be? What's the value prop? And it's really interesting to see that the vast majority were all around increasing productivity, and the lowest in the scale was actually reducing headcount. And then it's kind of like a spread around. But it's really interesting to see that, that there is a lot of scaremongering, and there is potential to automate jobs out, and that will happen over time. But for this wave and what we're talking about here, really, it's all about productivity gains, it's marginal gains, it's getting more effective, more time out of the workday for our staff. And like I said earlier, it's leveling them up. So Taglines, productivity. So I hope you've all been listening, and also trying to fill in a couple of answers to the questions as we go along. So I'm going to go to next slide now. So that was the question: what do you think will be the main impact of AI in the workplace? And there you go. Right. So again, it kind of mirrors what we saw when we did this previously. The number one is the productivity, but also interesting, reducing mundane tasks and accelerating the pace of work. And there's still a few votes coming in. But it's really good to see, that not only are Microsoft giving a message, which is that previous slide of what they believe the world thinks, but you guys are also coming back with a kind of similar kind of concept as well. So that's enough about the theory and kind of where we've got to. We're going to dig into a bit more of the detail and the tech now. So First of all, what does the Copilot ecosystem look like? And I'm putting this up almost as a little bit of a step back moment. Microsoft are baking Copilots into their entire ecosystem. It is going from, on the left, everyday, pro code, low code, business process, productivity, data, web, and security. But what's really important here is not all of these are relevant to you, to me, to the businesses that we operate. There are a few that are really important though. And what we're trying to do is filter out some of the things that are not that relevant and make sure we're homing on the ones that are actually going to add business value. Now, this wheel is also demonstrating Microsoft push of Copilots into their ecosystems, but it's doing it at a different rate of change for each part of this wheel. What we're seeing is, in some areas, really, really advanced, mature capabilities that have been built on, Copilot for GitHub, great example. The 365 Copilot is another great example of a mature capability. But as we go around the wheel, there's ones that haven't been released yet. There's ones that have been released with very limited features, and there's ones that are growing daily. So the rate of change in this wheel is huge. It's probably already out of date, even though it's relatively recently been put together. But it's just kind of showing the investment that Microsoft are putting in there and what's coming in the next year or so, and what's going to be iterated. And their vision is, eventually we'll have a Copilot to rule them all. Even this week, we saw the Windows 11 Copilot branch out from being just a web chat Copilot that could also do some cool stuff with Windows 11 to be fully integrated into the 365 Copilot. The change that we're seeing as early adopters of this is also very quick, and we're keeping up with the change as much as possible as well. But to kind of filter it down a little bit, where we're really focusing our attention is kind of these three different areas. The first one is the 365 Copilot, which we're going to go quite detailed into today, which is all around end user productivity. It's all around how do we get more productive out of the box with our Office 365 and the whole ecosystem. It's understanding where your data needs to be, what to expect, what not to expect, the kind of journey you need to go on. Second area is really around business process Copilots. So for a long time, we've been using Power Apps, we've been using Power Automate to knit together bits of business processes. With Copilot Studio, we're able to really extend that and add intelligence, add large language. And what that means is we can be much more joined up in these kind of processes that we're trying to bring together and expose them either through Copilot 365 or as standalone Copilots. So again, what we're seeing is quite a lot of interest here where maybe Copilot 365 isn't the thing that we need right now. It's a Copilot for X or for Y. And it's how do we build that and bring it to market and expose it through the right channels. And the last one, again, which is probably the really exciting one for me, is where Microsoft helping do real business transformation, so business system transformations by introducing large language enabled business applications and the capabilities that OpenAI have given them in a toolbox that we can help build large language applications against. And this is where the art of the possible comes in. And the way that I visualize it is you're going to get more productive with Copilot 365. We'll get better business processes through the Copilot Studio, but we'll be able to transform your businesses with the AI Studio. And that's really exciting. That's disruptive. It's taking that big step back saying, right, how is my business going to be transformed? Looking at AI, looking at large language models, rather than how do I make it better with large language models. So that's one to keep an eye on. We have got quite a lot of interest, and we're working with plenty of people around great use cases there already. But that's really the one that I'm most excited about, because that's really where customers and companies that embrace this kind of new wave of technology will be ahead of the pack. We talk about being ahead of the pack from a security perspective. This is how we keep our businesses ahead of the curve as well. So that's kind of the areas that I think we focus in on from the previous slide. All of the other co-pilots, they're there and as appropriate, they're great. But this is kind of the starting point for me. Now, I'm going to start just eking into, before I hand over to Johan, how we've got to where we are with 365 Copilot. So Copilot 365 is built on a huge history of Office 365, M365. It's built on that investment. So for everybody that's embraced Office 365, SharePoint, that ecosystem, it's brilliant because you're going to be able to inherit all the great things that that gives you. And that is scalable, secure infrastructure that's always evolving, always getting better. You can see this evolution over time. I know it stops in 2021, but even from here, there's even more and more things that have been added in. Now, we all remember, well, some of us remember Clippy, Microsoft's first assistant that helped Office, and that was all right. It had a couple of really nice use cases, and it was their first attempt at doing something like this. They had another attempt a bit later on with Cortana, before we get to where we are now with Copilot. And I only mention those because for years we've known what the use cases are for this Office 365 ecosystem from an AI assistant perspective. Microsoft have got a wealth of use cases. And now what we're seeing is finally the execution and the enablement of those use cases to actually happen and be useful and work. I spent many years looking at how you could transcode Teams meetings and summarize them and create actions. And now it's just here overnight. So the use cases have been there for years. And what we're seeing is all of those great use cases land almost overnight as you turn on Copilot 365 to give you those productivity gains. So I'm going to stop there and hand over to Johan, who's going to talk a little bit about 365 capabilities and take us through the architecture.
Thanks, Mark. Hello, everyone. Right, so I think it's important we just cover off the core components of Copilot. So it's based off large language models, which is the OpenAI. It uses Microsoft Graph, which is your data within your Microsoft 365 environment. It's then embedded within your Microsoft 365 apps like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. And then it uses the internet to get useful information. And what it does is when it looks up for something online, it looks at trusted sites. So you can be quite, you can feel safe knowing that the information that Copilot will get is, it's legitimate content. If we could just move on to the next slide. So here's a diagram and a flow sort of how Copilot works. So as I mentioned, it's embedded within your Microsoft application. It's got access to Microsoft Graph, and it uses large language models to process that prompt. So to give you a bit of just an example, let's say, for example, I want to create a proposal based on Copilot. What I'll do is I'll prompt Copilot to help me write a proposal, but I will ask it to look at our data, existing data and information we have of Copilot, and also look at content online. And then what it would do is it will send that to the large language models. So it does grounding within your graph. It looks at a web for the latest content. It will use the large language model to then provide you with that information. It will send the information to the end user within that app. It will start writing that proposal and the content that you have that already exists within Microsoft Graph. And then you can extend your experience with Copilot by plugging in your third-party cloud business applications. So to give you an example, if you had to, let's say you've got Monday.com, which is a project management platform. If you've got that plugged into Graph, you can prompt Copilot to give you information about projects that's in progress, perhaps projects that's on hold, and it will summarize all that information for you. You can even get it to do specific tasks, so help you create a project template or specific tasks within that platform, giving you that faster information, from your third-party applications. Because as you know, at the moment, what most people do is they reach out to their project managers to find out about a project, where now you've got access to it at your fingertips, and your project managers then have more time to spend on providing a quality service to your clients. So that's a sort of a high-level overview of how Copilot works. Could just move on to the next slide. We're doing a live demo today. We'll demonstrate how it works in Word, in Teams, and Excel. But just to give you a high-level overview of its capabilities, within Outlook, you can get it to summarize emails. You can get it to help draft emails. You can ask it to summarize all the meetings that you've got scheduled for the week. In Word, it can help you write proposals, summarize documents, which for me is a very important feature. I have to read, I get about 45 documents that I need to review every week, and I just get it to summarize it, and I'm fully aware of what it is we're proposing within that document. So it just sort of streamlines that whole process. I'm not a heavy Excel user, but I've been speaking to my colleagues and they find Excel quite useful, within Copilot, where it can help you understand the formulas within that spreadsheet. It can help you analyze the data and guide you on best practices to get the most out of that spreadsheet. So another useful content where it sort of empowers your staff to do a bit more. And then PowerPoint, we'll do a demo about that as well today in today's video, where you can use your existing documents and turn it into PowerPoint slides. And then my favorite, Microsoft Teams. I have about 6 to 7 meetings every day. Having to keep track of all my meetings and taking notes during a call can be quite a challenge for me. And now I just get Copilot to listen into the meeting. And then at the end of the day, I can get it to summarize all the discussions I've had with my clients and internally, and take that information, put it in an email, send it off to them, and we're all both aligned on what we've discussed and agreed, which I felt has really sort of given me the ability to pay attention when I do speak to my client, because sometimes I struggle to multitask. Having to take notes and listen can be a challenge for me. Now I can give them our full attention. Just move to the next slide. And Copilot Chat. This, again, it's a very similar experience to ChatGPT, where you can ask it to find information online or help you with a product or a service or a solution. Now, we would encourage everyone to start using Copilot Chat. It's there, it's available for you if you're on a business premium, or business standard premium and enterprise license, you will have access to Copilot Chat. The reason why we'd encourage you to start using it is because it's data that's protected. So anything that you put into Copilot Chat is personal. It's not been shared. It's not been used to train large language models, where you don't have control over ChatGPT. So we would encourage everyone to start using Copilot Chat to get familiar with it. But there's a lot you can do within that platform. You don't necessarily need to go into each and every app like Outlook, Word, etc. You can ask Copilot Chat to summarize the emails you've received today, or find me a specific document with the following keywords, and it will go and do that for you. Or you could even ask it to summarize all the chats you need to respond to within Teams. Okay, next slide. And here we just want to just make you feel at ease. Microsoft inherits your company security and compliance policies. It will only give the end user the information they have access to. And when it comes to privacy, Microsoft gives you their own copy of their own OpenAI, so you've got full control within your tenant. Microsoft do not use it to train their own large language models. It's your data and your data only.
Thanks, Johan. So I think I'm going to flip over to Fraser for a moment now, just to talk a little bit about the semantic index.
Hi everyone. So semantic indexes, it all sounds a bit complicated, but actually under the bonnet, it's not that bad. So if we take an example of a recipe book, in order to find things quickly, at the back, we've got an index where things are listed, sometimes in alphabetical order, sometimes in the order of ingredients, sometimes in the cooking order, time. And that's exactly how keyword searching works. There's a selection of indexes referenced to find out what you're looking for. The word semantic actually comes from the Greek word, I'm not going to be able to say it now, the Greek word semantikos. Sorry if there's any Greek people for my pronunciation there, but it literally means relating to signs. And that's the key difference between a traditional index and a semantic index. We essentially get a dual-tiered strategy where we've got tenant-level indexing on things like files, lists, and libraries. And we also have a user-level index containing things like emails, key documents, relationships, and even at mentions within the context. And that all comes from the Graph API, which is integrated, giving much better relevancy to the search string that you put in. Now, this is one of the key things that Mark mentioned earlier on about the prompt engineering. So when you combine a user prompt with the retrieved information, Copilot essentially derives personalized responses through a large language model. And that is the key thing and the key difference between the semantic index and a traditional search index. So just pop on to the next slide. I just wanted to spend just a moment talking about, well, what constitutes a good prompt? And this is a really good example where we break a prompt down into 4 key sections. The first thing that Copilot is looking for is, well, what is it you want? Simple question. Generate 3 to 5 bullet points. That's a task, that's a thing, that's something that's definitive. You then want to provide a bit of context. What do you want it to do? Well, what's important? To prepare me for a meeting for client X to discuss their phase 3 plus branding campaign. So give me 3 to 5 bullet points on this topic, on this theme, on this information. And then where do we want the source to come from? So we can provide it with direction about where to look for that information. And then finally, are there any expectations? In this case, please use simple language so I can get up to speed quickly. Awesome. That gives Copilot a theme that you would apply to whatever response it's going to give. And actually, I'll show you this in practice when we go into Copilot Studio a little later on. So next slide, please. Here, I just wanted to highlight the differences that you would have in your experience when you look at something with semantics and without semantic indexing and with semantic indexing. So on the left-hand side, this would be a traditional SharePoint search. A couple of words at the top. In this case, we're looking for a Melbourne session. If you just click on one more slide, or one more click, sorry, what you can see here are a couple of key things. If you think before about my traditional index, my dictionary, or my kind of library at the back, it's keyword matched. We've got close matching in ranking order. So if I ask for something specific, it goes to the index and says, I'm looking for these words. And it gives you those in order of ranking of closest match. It also looks at last modified and personal data that is displayed, but it's dumb in that respect. It literally just gives you some metadata around the document or the link that it's surfaced. It can pull context from the document summary, but again, this is just literally pulling out metadata against that key standard index match. If you click again, Mark, what you can see now is the difference with the semantic index. What we get is a structured answer, which is context-based from the information it's found. It's pulled back specific data from the files that we've pointed it towards, but it's also looked across the board to look at relationships. And actually, you can see there a specific link to a person, and that person link is actually a much richer link because it's somebody that me, the person that searched, is in connection with. Now, semantic indexing is being pushed out to all of your tenants, and obviously Microsoft are focusing on those that are already using Copilot or are in the kind of 300 seats and above. But actually, you can see here, this is coming to us all. We don't necessarily have control over when that happens, but what you will find is if you are using Copilot with semantic indexing, you will get a completely different response to without semantic indexing. And of course, I think as Mark's already mentioned, many of these things are happening day to day, week to week. We almost can't keep up with the rate of change here because there's all sorts of things being stitched into the background and stitched in across all of the different platforms. I'll stop talking there and hand back over to Johan, I think.
Thanks, Fraser. So we thought we'd just share this with you to, so basically Microsoft has given a few companies early access before they announced that Copilot's now available. And they shared some of the feedback that I've received where 77% of them didn't want to give up Copilot. 70% of them showed that they are more productive, and 68% of, confirmed that it improved the quality of their work, which is really good results from my perspective. Look, Copilot is not for everyone. However, those who thrive within the productivity stack, we encourage you to give them a license to get the most out of Microsoft 365 environment. Now, if we move on to the next slide, we just want to explain to you the sort of journey, just to sort of set your expectations, because once you've got access to Copilot, it's a never-ending journey. But the first thing that you need to focus on is getting your house in order. So that's your data structure, the permissions, and taking governance, into consideration. What you don't want is an overcomplicated data structure. You want to be able to have a structure in place that's expandable. You want to make sure the permissions are simplified. Overcomplicated permissions can sort of slow down the process or an experience within AI. You want data going in and out quite quickly. Then the second step, sort of preparing your workforce for AI. And again, we've spoken to a bit earlier, where you need to sort of train them on prompt engineering, making sure they understand how to use AI. And again, you have to work with your staff, share with them, say to them, look, we're going to start looking at AI. These are the capabilities. we need to build a deployment plan. We need to focus on adoption. Let's create some use cases. And then earlier I mentioned in a diagram where you can plug in extensions to expand your experience with AI. So get your business applications involved. Speak to your suppliers and support team and get them to help you plug in that data within your environment so that you can get more out of Copilot. And again, you'll always look at custom integrations. Microsoft's always launching new features. It's every day, and it's quite a challenge to keep up to date with the changes Microsoft are making. They are just going for gold at the moment, but it's exciting, and you're going to have to keep up to date with that as well, and make sure that you follow through that whole process of doing workshop sessions, preparing for the new feature updates, deploying it within the business, and making sure the adoption, there's a key focus on adoption. And when you go back to the data health, permissions, and governance, that's something you need to be reviewing on a regular basis to ensure that sensitive information is secured and the structure you've got in place is working well with for Copilot. We could just move on to the next slide, please. So we created just a checklist to give you an idea on what things you need to start thinking about within your organization. Is that you need to look at identifying use cases. So I've mentioned it before. Start engage with your staff, talk to them about AI, and then document your use cases where you feel there's it will help your business. Make sure everyone's thriving within the productivity suite, and that could be easily pulled out of your tenant in the usage report, so you can see your top collaborators, those who is really thriving within that environment. You can have sort of quick wins where you can allow them to have access to Copilot immediately, so that they can start providing you with some feedback. Do weekly catch-up meetings with them, talk to them about their experience, what they like, share your stories, and sort of identify how it's going to help the business and the rest of the departments. Always have data and security in mind, and work closely with your team to identify what is confidential data. Start talking about labeling sensitive information and data loss prevention policies. And it's also good to just make sure your data is up to date. So any old content, get it out of the way, look at archiving it so that you only have access to rich and latest information. Next slide.
Yeah, thanks, Johan. So we're now going to get a couple of demos. So we have got a bit of a pre-recorded one for Copilot, just to go through a use case and some great examples there before we flip into Fraser, who can do a live demo of Copilot Studio. And if we've got time at the end, we'll do a real live, I'll share my screen and show a bit of our experience of Copilot as well. So I'm just going to start.
How's it going?
Yes, good. Thanks. Can't complain. Thanks for making some time for this call. I've got a new business opportunity. It's a client that we actually recently migrated from G Suite to Office 365. With them now fully embedded in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, they're quite keen on leveraging Copilot that was recently launched. They want to understand what our approach would be and how we suggest they look at implementing this. Can you help me with that?
Yes, absolutely, Pete. We've recently onboarded a Copilot readiness assessment to help and support our clients, onboard Copilot within their business. So what we typically do is do a demo workshop session. We explain to them the possibilities of AI, give them a few use case scenarios, and we look at an entire sort of estate and infrastructure. So we'll basically review what operating systems they are using. Are they up to date? Do they have the latest version of Office? We'll look at usage reports to identify high collaborators, so that we can nominate a couple of key staff members in the company to start using AI and trial it and provide us with feedback. And as part of that whole journey, we'll adoption strategy to onboard AI within the business. And I think this would be the ideal solution for them. What I could do is just draft up a proposal and an introduction to the service, as well as provide you with a presentation so that you can just present that to them. So that's something that would be quite useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are a little under time pressure yet because the board is getting together tomorrow to discuss the business plan, and my contact is quite keen on demonstrating how the IT strategy can help support that, and specifically the use of AI within the business. I'm guessing the adoption, or how shall we say, the Copilot readiness assessment will cover also data governance and security, because that was obviously a key concern for them, was making sure that if they are looking at incorporating Copilot within the business, it's not going to potentially surface sensitive information that certain users shouldn't be privy to.
No, it doesn't include it, but we've got additional services that can cover that. But as part of the readiness assessment, we'll identify that. We'll see where they are at. We didn't include it with this assessment because the majority of our clients are, well secured. They've embraced the security stack in the last year, as you've seen. But for those who are a little bit behind, whether it's security or their digital transformation journey, we'll identify that in the readiness assessment and advise the next steps that they need to take in order to get where they need to be before they even start thinking about using AI.
Perfect. And the other question that came up was with regards to working out who within the business will really see the benefits and the added value, because it's obviously quite a sizable expense in terms of rolling this out company-wide. Will the readiness assessment help the business identify who the potential adopters might be and who will really benefit from it?
Yeah, so we'll look at the usage reports and see who's their top collaborators within SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, emails, and then just highlight them and pass it on to our client because we'll also have a look at those who's not utilizing the productivity suite so that we can perhaps assist them with some training or a bit of more awareness sessions to get those who's not thriving within that space, to get them where they need to be. And those who are heavily using it, we want to identify them as well, because they are the ones that we want to, give them access to Copilot so that we can sort of give them more, time to do more.
Excellent. Well, I think that seems to cover all bases. So yes, if you could get that proposal and presentation, if you've got the time to put something together, that would be super useful and certainly give us a good starting point.
Awesome. I'll crack on with that and get it over to you.
Thanks, Johan. Appreciate it. All the best.
You too.
Bye-bye then.
Bye. Right. I've now launched Copilot, and I'm going to ask you to recap the meeting I had with Pete earlier. It's just worth noting I've had a couple of meetings after speaking to Pete, and I'm not sure about yourselves, but sometimes we tend to forget what we've discussed because we're very busy. Having multiple meetings and having to keep track of what's been discussed and agreed can be quite a challenge. At least now I can go back to the meeting that I had with Pete and ask Copilot to just summarize all the key points that we've discussed, as well as what we've agreed. Right, we've got Word open. I've summarized and prompted Copilot on what I discussed with Pete, what I need help with. So I'm mentioning I need a proposal for Peter's client to talk about our Copilot readiness approach. I've referenced a file, which is our Copilot readiness assessment, which talks a little bit more in detail about our Copilot readiness assessment. And I've asked it to articulate a plan explaining in detail what it is we'll be doing for the business. At the same time, I use BCN Group as our client name for obvious reasons. So you can see it's looked up BCN online. It's looked at our services that we provide, as well as our company values. And it's using it as an introduction to complement the solution we are proposing to our clients. So it's telling us that Copilot will help and support us deliver solutions to our clients to be more productive, efficient, etc., which is really great. And it's now busy working on a phased approach plan. It's looked at the content in our Copilot readiness assessment. It's taking the conversations that I've summarized, and it's now creating a detailed plan on how we can support them onboard AI within their business. And as you can see, it's just a matter of a couple of seconds, and you've got a full detailed plan, which is, for me, amazing. These sort of things can take me up to days to create. Having to do research, having to look up our client's company website, look at the services they offer, going back on notes that I've written down, and putting it all together and articulating a solution can be quite time consuming. And here you go, got a full-on detailed proposal that I can now forward on to Peter. Okay, we now have PowerPoint open. What I'm going to do is reference that document that we've recently created using Copilot and prompt Copilot to create a presentation. What it's doing now, it's reviewing the document. It's going to bullet point all the slideshows it's going to create, which you can see on the right-hand side. There we go. As you can see, it's now picked up all the phases. And off it goes. There we go. Got our first presentation done. Let's view this in full screen. It's even done the animations, which is great. There's our agenda. Okay, it needs a bit of work, but it's given me a baseline to work off. And just double checking everything's there. Yeah, it's looking good so far. Let's go and maybe use the designer tool, see what we can come up with to make it look more presentable. There we go. Sort of like that option there. Actually, that's better. Colors always stand out, makes it easy for you to present. What else is there? I like this flow. Yeah, that could work well to explain our assessment journey. And what it also does, actually, it's created sort of speaker notes. So now I can just hand this over to Peter, and he can then read through those notes and prepare himself for tomorrow's meeting, which is quite useful, and it's saving us a lot of time. What I'm going to do now is just summarize this document quickly, because now we've got the document, we've got the presentation, we're pretty much good to go, but I still want to make Peter's life a bit easier. So I'm going to summarize the document, because I know he's on a big deadline, and you need to be prepared for tomorrow. So what we're going to do here is summarize this document. I'm going to put it in an email for him and attach the presentation as well as the document, so you can read through the summary of the document without having to go and read the full proposal. Have a good solid idea what this proposal is all about, our Copilot readiness assessment approach, and what we're going to be doing for our client. And then he will be more than confident to go and deliver that presentation tomorrow.
Cool. Thanks, Johan, for the video. I'm going to move off that now into next bit with Fraser, who's going to go through a bit of what we're going to demonstrate on Copilot Studio.
Hi again, everyone. Okay, so I've got a couple of slides, then I'm going to dive in. I'm going to pray to the demo gods, because you know how these things work. So we're going to go live. But for those of you that have not seen Copilot Studio before, what is it? How does it work? At the end of the day, Copilot Studio enables you to build your own Copilot. It enables you to use AI-generated content as well as structured content that you want to be able to kind of form your user, your kind of actor through that experience. So it's hybrid of both. Now you can leverage interactions with other data sets, with parts of the Power Platform, with parts of Azure, with other Microsoft stacks and beyond. You can use generative responses, you can create kind of custom interactions, the same sorts of things that you used to see in things, again, sorry if you haven't heard of this before, but Power Virtual Agents. But it's infused all of this AI content and all of this kind of like semantic indexing on top of what you had before, as well as leveraging large language models. As I say, it's fully integrated with lots and lots of other platforms, as well as engagement channels. And that's one of the key things here. You can build your own Copilot, and then you can surface it not wherever you like, but in the majority of places that Microsoft would allow you to. So websites and any of the Microsoft products, things like Slack and Cortana, all of these locations, you can then surface your Copilot out into the world. If you just move on to the next slide, Mark. Give us a few clicks. I'm just trying to build a picture here. So within Microsoft 365, we've got conversational experiences. This is Copilot for Microsoft 365. Awesome. But one of the questions in the chat was around, well, what about other Copilots? There are Copilots appearing all over the place. So we've got one in sales, we've got one in service, and we've also got Copilots within Power Platform. Yes, you heard me right. Power BI has its own Copilot. Power Apps has actually got two Copilots, one to help you build the app and one to help users use the app in the context of the data that's inside the Power App. Awesome. There are loads of other Copilots, so things like GitHub and others, as well as custom, so really customized Copilots that have been built for enterprise and other third parties. Now, the key thing to think about here is, if you want a Copilot, don't build a Copilot on a generic use case, because guess what? Microsoft will be launching it. So if there's a product and you think, oh, I'd love to create a Copilot around this, well, is it going to add extra value to your business beyond the generic questions? How many opportunities do I have? Do I need to do some activity today? What's coming in my diary? Those things Microsoft have already got covered. It's where you've got something special, some secret sauce, some magical information that you want your users to be able to key into in a different scenario. And we'll go through a couple of those scenarios in a moment. So just think, below that Microsoft Copilot's blue line, you've got integrations with all these things. And I see someone's just asked the question, can it link to SQL databases? Yes, it can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take over the screen share from Mark, and I'm going to jump straight into Copilot Studio. Here we are. So on the screen, I just need to bring that back up so I can kind of see what's going on in the background. On the screen, you can see the Copilot Studio authoring experience. Now, key thing to note here is that many of these things are in preview, because guess what? It keeps changing, which is awesome because things keep getting added all the time. Now, what I've done is I've created a little environment, and yes, this is exactly the same experience from Power Platform, where you've got multiple environments that you can move in between, production, development, all of that kind of stuff. And all of these things can get wrapped up in solutions. So again, you can control exactly where things are, package things up, publish them to other environments, and have a proper release strategy around these. So on the left-hand side, we've got a couple of things here. Copilots, essentially super chatbots. We've got plugins, prompts, models, and then Power Platform. This is, I don't really know why this here is just a link to other parts of the Power Platform. But the key thing here is, and I'm going to go right back to the bit I talked about earlier on about prompts. So I'm going to show you some prompt engineering first, because it's the baseline that we're going to use in an actual Copilot that I built. So here we've got some prompts, and these are all the kinds of generative prompts that you would think that you might want to use, but you could make your own. And in here, I'm just going to use GPT to create some information. So think back to the prompt slide we had earlier on. What do we want it to do? Prepare a structured email to the following sales inquiry, which is a variable. The response is from Charlie Smith, the sales specialist at VCN, whose email address is blah, 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 the phone number is blah, 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 and the customer name is blah, 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 based in a location. And the response should outline an initial engagement meeting to discuss the next steps. That's my context, as well as the data sources I wanted to use. Then the customer's email addresses, whatever it is, and please use simple language to highlight the sentiment. So I'm going to test the prompt. Now, nobody wants to see me typing because that's boring. So I'm just going to copy and paste some stuff in here. Customer name, Fraser Deer, city Reading, customer email, fraser.deer@bcn.co.uk. Test prompt. So what I'm doing here is thinking about a user going to our website and engaging with a Copilot on our website. Awesome. That's the response that our prompt returns. Dear Fraser Deer, thank you for reaching out. It might not be the best email in the world, but actually it's already done. I don't really need to think about it. So what if I wanted to change it around a bit? And I might say, please use, I don't know, a travel theme and use emojis to highlight the sentiment. Let's try again. There you go. So it's restructured the content. It's restructured the format. It's given us something different because actually we've asked it to now do something different with a different theme. And many of these things are lovely and plains, and the language is also different to go around this theme. Now, I'm not going to save that because what I now want to do is show you it in flow. So if I go to a Copilot, here's one I prepared earlier, we have the Copilot authoring experience. And this is where we've got the generative AI, entities, all of the sorts of data parts that you might want to bring in. And the thing to remember here is we're infusing generative AI with functional that you want to add to your business processes. And this is this key thing that Mark was mentioning earlier on. We could have built an app for this, but actually we can talk our way through this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to first of all ask it some basic questions, because I've already loaded 2 websites to this Copilot. Who is BCN? And what it's doing is it's going away and looking at the data that it's got reference to and it's going to give us a response. This is generative. It's gone and looked at data sources. It's given us the references to those data sources, and it's compiled an answer based on the question I've asked it. Let me ask a different question. Who is Mark Rotheram at BCN? And what it's doing is it's going to look at the database, which is in this case, the websites I provided it, and it's given us the answer. Now, this is a shameless plug, but hey, we just opened a brand new office in Reading. So let's find out. What facilities does the Reading campus office have? And again, it's going to cross-reference the information that it knows from our BCN website, which is a brand new BCN office opens at Reading, and it cross-references the Campus Reading website, which is the website around the building, and it's infusing that together to give us a generative response. I'm nervous I'm running out of time, so I'm going to jump through to something else. Here's one I prepared earlier. So I'm now going to show you this live. So if I think about first scenario, I'm a customer and this is a business website. So I'd like to ask about an inquiry. For example, I'm sure any person might ask that in a bit of a better way. Of course, demo gods are not with me right now. Let's try this again. Sales inquiry. Okay, here we go. What's your name? Now, this is an unauthenticated chatbot. So of course, it needs to know who you are. What is your email address? Now you can see, think back to my prompt. It's actually just asking me the questions, which are the variables. Fraser.tier@bcn.co.uk. If I've spelled that right. Please provide your sales inquiry. Here's one I prepared earlier. What town? Reading. Cool. Thanks for your inquiry. We'll be in touch shortly. Now, behind the scenes, because we're actually creating content generatively, somebody needs to review that content before it will actually go out into the world. And so right now, behind the scenes, I'm literally going to authenticate that. I'm going to say, yep, that's been done. I'm happy with the content. And in my inbox, ta-da, there it is. There's the generative content that's come directly from our Copilot chatbot, and it has come directly to me, the person that requested information. Now, slightly different tack. Think now as if we were inside a business. So I'm a business user, and we want to do something that's not only generative, but also something functional, something that adds extra value to your business. So I'm going to say, I want to book a desk. Okay, let's find out about you so we can get this booked in. Now, in this case, it would be authenticated, but let's just pretend for a moment that it's not. Fraser Deer, what's your email address? Fraser.deer@bcn.co.uk. Okay, cool. Which office are you looking to book? Reading. Which date you're? Oh, okay. Well, Friday. Tomorrow is already fully booked, so can't do that. If you click on that, it will actually waitlist you. But for example, let's just say Monday. Thanks. Awesome. I've got booking reference. It tells me how busy the office is going to be. I look forward to seeing you. Did that answer your question? Cool. Yes, it did. And again, we're asking for sentiment. Did everything work well? To then give you proactive information back into your business to improve the processing and tools. I'm going to stop there because we've only got 4 more minutes left, but hopefully that gives you a really quick overview of some of the functionality here in Copilot Studio, but there's so much more to show you. So for now, that is me. I will hand back over to Mark to go through some of your questions.
Great demo. I've just put on the Q&A that have come through on Slido. I'll start at the bottom because I have just answered that question in the Teams chat, which was around, we've just changed it. So the last one was around GDPR. It is compliant with GDPR because it inherits Microsoft's GDPR policy and ecosystem, and it doesn't do anything different with the data. So that's answered in the Teams chat. First one, do you actively need to record the meeting for this to work, or is it automatically storing your voice conversation? The answer is you do not need to record the meeting. When you start a new meeting that's been scheduled, you can click the Copilot button, and what that'll do is start creating the transcript. So at the end of the meeting, there'll be a transcript created that's available for everyone in that meeting, and that's the kind of the minimum entry point it needs. If the meeting is recorded, then great, it'll work on that as well. All you need is an invite to that meeting. You don't need to turn up. As long as you've had an invite, it's been recorded, or a transcript has been created, Copilot will work on it. Now, one of the releases that Microsoft have got, I believe, coming soon is the ability to not need to generate the transcript and to still have the Copilot capabilities. That's not available yet. I believe it's coming, but that'll mean that you'll be able to use Copilot without creating a recording or a transcript at the end. It might still pop up and say Copilot's listening. I'm not sure because we've not seen it yet. But I think they've taken that bit of feedback that says it's a bit intrusive to click the Copilot button and explain every call, if it's someone that's not used to it, that you're doing it for that reason. Today's presentation created on Copilot, and if not, why not? It wasn't. Now, the reason is Copilot levels people up. Yeah, it levels someone up that's not very good at maybe creating presentations, and it creates it really quickly. I like to craft my presentations, and I like the team around me to work collaboratively on it. We could have used Copilot to do a baseline, but what we actually did was curate it and put a lot of polish onto it to make it how I wanted it to come through. And that's a great example where, for some people, for me, Copilot for PowerPoint isn't really going to change my life too much. For Teams, it's amazing, but it's finding the right use case for your business. If you're not a curator of PowerPoint presentations and you want to use Copilot to create them and give that boost, then brilliant. That's a great use case, but it might not be the use case for everyone. Next one, how much does Copilot Studio cost? I'm going to revert to Fraser to answer that one.
Yeah, this is a really good question. It's not the same model as Power Virtual Agents where you had to license each bot and users and all this jazz. The way it works now is it's one license per tenant, and that contains 25,000 messages. Some of those messages are transactional, A to B, and some of those are generative. Single transactions are 1, generative are 2. But what is the cost? The cost is £164.40 per month at the tenant level. And then you can license users inside your tenant, and those users who are creating bots are free. So it's a completely different model to all of the rest of the power stack, if you like. Copilot Studio is very much about trying to get users to use the messaging as a consumption service.
Thanks, Fraser. So I'm going to whiz through the last ones. So will the new version of a planner be integrated? I'm going to say probably. It's not currently integrated. So when Copilot gives you tasks, you've got to copy and paste them. I would be amazed if it's not, but Microsoft haven't given us that snippet yet. Will there be a non-profit tariff coming anytime soon? Don't know. It costs quite a lot because Microsoft have had to invest a lot in GPU farms to actually make this thing work. So the license fee is representative of the fact that they've had to make a massive capital investment in GPUs. There may be a free one coming soon, but where I would go to start off with is the actual free versions you've got access to today, which isn't as fully featured or capable, but it's a good starting point to get some level of Copilot capabilities coming through. Next one, hi on Teams, how do we add the Copilot? First of all, buy the license and then give it a few days and Copilot will make its way into your ecosystem. Then when you're in a Teams meeting that's been scheduled, there'll be a little Copilot button, you click it and it starts up and runs. I've run out of time, otherwise I would show that. And actually, do some live demos, but that's again, it's pretty native to get it going. Although some of the feedback we've got is it's not very natural to find it after the event and go back to it. So there's definitely a bit of a learning curve of to have to go back to a meeting afterwards to find your Copilot. Was the last bit related to plugins? Yes, it's integrating multiple systems together. So Fraser showed a discrete chatbot that manages booking system. You could then integrate that into Copilot 365 to have a full rounded experience for all of your staff, where if they wanted to book seats, it'd be in that same chat window as with everything else. GitHub for Visual Studio, will it be able to be managed via 365 at some point? I'm not sure on that one. They're quite discrete service capabilities. Microsoft's vision, I think, is to pull everything under a central Copilot of Copilots, but they are not. They're not there today, and they might not be there with everything anytime soon, if I'm honest, because there's a lot going on, and it's whether there's value in doing that. So that's the end of the questions. Thanks very much for those questions. Very good. We'll be able to send out the Q&A more formally later because Copilot has been and we'll be able to summarize all those and get it to write up that afterwards. If you do want any more information around adoption, training, how to get going on Copilot 365, you know where to go. And especially the stuff that Fraser just showed is really just starting to open the box of capability with large language as we integrate into environments. So lots of really exciting stuff there as well. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to thank Fraser and Johan for helping out today, and all the guys in the background. Thank you very much for all of your time and attention. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next webinar.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks all. Take care.